Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Despite where you are, we are having a great sunny day here in Central Ontario. I'm going to begin this morning's presentation the way that we begin all of our events at Georgian College with an official land acknowledgement. Georgian College acknowledges that all campuses are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Georgian College is dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. As I said, good morning and welcome. We are so pleased to have two fantastic alumni join us this morning to speak about career development and about finding that dream job. My name is Jamie Campbell, and I'm the manager of alumni engagement, annual and legacy giving at Georgian. And I will be your MC this morning to help facilitate this conversation with Melissa and Neil. A couple of quick notes before we get started. For the benefit of those on the call, this morning's session is being recorded and we'll be sharing out the presentation with our alumni community following today's presentation. And we're looking forward to having some really great discussion this morning with Melissa and Neil. A bit about Melissa and Neil. I'll read you their bios and I apologize, I will read from paper because I do not want to get this wrong. The hardest part of my job is making sure that I don't introduce the guests incorrectly. So Melissa is a graduate of Georgian's Business Administration program, Human Resources, and has worked with the college for 4 years in Employment Ontario programs with Georgian College Career and Employment Community Services team. Here she works one-on-one with community job seekers to support them in finding employment and accessing retraining. Melissa enjoys meeting new people and being of service to others. In her spare time, Melissa can most often be found crocheting or hiking with her dog and fiance. And Neil Survey studied computer science in India before graduating with a diploma in automotive business from Georgian College. He has more than 12 years of work experience with luxury and mainstream automotive brands across dealerships, as well as the corporate environment. He is currently the manager, chief marketing management at Infinity Canada. Outside of work, Neil is passionate about motorcycles and rides a BMW S1000R, which sounds like a great time. When not out on his motorcycle, he enjoys camping, hiking, and trips to the cottage with his wife. So thank you, Melissa and Neil, for joining us this morning. We're going to be having a conversation and I'm going to be asking questions throughout the session this morning. And Melissa and Neil are going to be providing some insight on some of those questions. And a lot of the questions that we're going to be asking have to do with the job search, but also about finding the passion for a job because, when you join an organization or when you join an employer, it's as much about you as it is about the organization. So you want to make sure that that what you're pursuing is a good fit for you. So jumping into the conversation here, let's begin with question one. So Melissa, we'll start with you. When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up, and how did that change over time?
So when I was younger, the first thing I remember wanting to be and what I wanted to be for the very longest time leading pretty much all the way into high school and into university was a teacher and a school teacher. And I think that's because the majority of women in my family were school teachers. And so I just thought that's what we did. It wasn't until I actually got experience in an elementary school classroom that I realized maybe teaching isn't exactly what I want to do, and I started to reconsider things. I started having conversations with friends about what they were studying and what they were liking about their programs. I also started exploring different programs being offered by different institutions and landed on the Human Resources program here at Georgian because I thought that human resources could allow me to work in a professional business setting, but in a setting where I could still be sharing my knowledge and insight with others. And then through the Human Resources program, through the co-ops in that program, I actually touched on job search coaching with Georgian College's Career and Co-op department. And that's when I really fell in love with that and decided to pursue that as a career path. And as luck would have it, right around the time I graduated, a contract position was posted with Georgian in that field, and I've not left since.
Excellent. And Neil, same question to you. And before you answer, I'll just remind the folks on the call today that there is for them to ask questions of you as well. So feel free to post your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll visit them throughout the conversation this morning. And of course, any questions that that remain at the end of the presentation, we'll collect and ensure that we include responses to when we mail out the presentation after today to everybody. So Neil, back to you. When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up, and how did that change over time?
Right. Thanks, Jamie. So essentially, you kind of mentioned this at the beginning in my introduction itself. I've been a car guy, a car nut since I was a little kid, to be honest. And back then, for me, a job was really essentially all that you see on TV, and all that's basically beamed to you. All the glorious jobs that you see and aspire for. So for me, growing up, when I was really young, joining a racing team was something that I always wanted to get into, like joining motorsport. But funny enough, for some reason, now that I think of it, I never wanted to be the racer, like the driver. I always wanted to work in the team, like be the guy behind the scenes, be the engineer behind the scenes. But that was just something that I always, thought is the most cool and the perfect job for me. But I think growing up, as I got into college, I started realizing the practicality of things and figuring out that not everything's that easy, and you can't just overnight become a race engineer. But I didn't lose out my passion towards cars. And there was the one thing which I realized that, my job or my career would not be just a job that I do for me being employed, but it has to be an extension of me, an extension of what I am, an extension of what naturally I would do without even getting paid, for example. And that's what I always consciously kept my focus towards automotive, car industry. And that's what actually saw me finding a job in a dealership. Although I'm studied in computer science, that's what I finished my academics in back in India. But I knew that is not the industry for me. That's not something I want to do. And I was like, you know what? Cars are my focus. That's what I will, look towards. So got into a dealership. And initially, it was literally like every car guy's, passion come true. You're surrounded by these fantastic cars. My very first job was in a Mercedes-Benz dealership. Got a chance to, work around even these fantastic AMG sport models, whatnot. But at one point I paused and I realized that, hey, you know what? It's amazing to be a car guy. But for me personally, I wanted to grow more. I wanted to grow in the industry. And the one thing which, I realized was if I want to be someone who grows in this automotive industry, I do need a macro vision, of this industry. So only being a sales guy just surrounded by cars and being a car guy is not going to help me. I need to know the business side of it as well. So that's basically what I started doing, started reading up on every single thing that there is on the business side. And that was one of the things that actually brought me to Canada when I studied automotive business, wanted to understand, the Canadian auto industry and the business side of it. And that's pretty much what has led me to where I am today. And I think the last thing I would say is, overall this journey, since you asked me how did that change as well over time, the one thing I've realized is, and as an advice I can give to everyone who's on call, yes, do choose a job, which is something that you're going to be most passionate about. But at the same time, be ready to find the other side of that business as well. There are times when you're going to find the bad side or the ugly side of business too, but that shouldn't demotivate you. That shouldn't take you out of it. There are a lot of car people who have grown with me in the past, and the moment they see the business side of automobiles, they're like, oh no, this is not for me. All they thought is cars are cool, fast, but no, there is other side too. So prepare yourself for that holistic immersion into the business, I would say.
Excellent. And of course, now is a good time, I guess, for us to acknowledge, you mentioned that you came from India to study the automotive business. So we should give a nod to the Automotive Business School of Canada that of course we have at Georgian College. So shout out to all of the graduates from the Automotive Business School of Canada. Over to question 2. And this question, Melissa, let's start with you. How can someone that may not know exactly what they want to do figure out what their dream job actually is?
So like Neil mentioned, a good thing to consider is what you're passionate about in life. But beyond that, also looking at maybe doing some career assessments, which we can offer free of charge through our employment center. I believe that Kristen has some material that she'll send out to attendees on our services, but I just thought I would plug that in there. But doing career assessments is always a really great starting point to help you consider what you're passionate about, what you value, what you're interested in, what you're skilled at, and what you think that you could excel at. But beyond just looking at the list of careers that it gives you, you actually need to do some research on those careers. Typically, when you're doing an online assessment, the list of careers that it gives you will actually give you career profiles for each career. So reading over those career profiles, going on to job search sites and looking at what current postings are like, and then doing research on companies to see what's available in your area, who you might want to work with. Another good thing to do is also to network with people who are in your areas of interest, and hopefully to set up an informational interview with them so that you can really get an insider's perspective on what that particular career entails.
Excellent. And same question to you, Neil.
All right. So for me, some really valid points that Melissa mentioned, and I'm not going to go over those because those are seriously valid and something which even I had to say. But you know what, I'll sort of rewind this back to the question itself. You mentioned, what are the dream jobs? So just to think about that word itself, dream job, it's basically a job that you would, dream of doing. That to me is the most important thing. And I personally really thought about this very hard in my own career. Every single job that I've taken has been very particularly chosen. I've never just accidentally got into a job. And I've always thought about this one thing. And to me, the definition is, as a job, what is it that will come the most natural to me, right? Like, it shouldn't feel like a job. It's a very cliched statement. Everyone says that. But trust me, once you find that, once you're in the zone, you will not feel that it's a job. Even if it's an extra hours you got to put in, you got to go over weekends, you will genuinely and naturally do it. And the most important thing that I feel where a lot of young people are, when I look back at myself, is don't just go about the job title or the brand. Actually go further if possible and research what the job particularly is. What's the role? What are the responsibilities? What's going to be your day-to-day task? And if possible, and this is something which will come with experience, visualize yourself in it. Do you see yourself doing that day in and day out? For example, I've had friends who've joined car sales because they think, wow, it's amazing being in automotive world, being surrounded by new cars. 6 months, they're like, no, this is not me. Every month, the pressure of sales, I cannot do that. So, try and visualize yourself if that is really you. Only then you'll really find the dream job, as we call it. And then also don't do it just because, your friends are talking about it. The money is good, or, it's the most trending thing. Trust me, these things wear off quite fast. A good brand and, being around cool, things, or the money being good. What really matters at the end of the day is, have you done a good job? Have you done justice to the job? Do you feel satisfied? And on that Friday evening when you'll switch off, do you feel, yes, what you're doing right with yourself and with your career? And the last thing I'll say is, maybe it's a bit of a stretch, something that even I'm personally pushing myself towards is, on a Friday in the evening, I don't want to say, thank God it's Friday. You know what I mean? Think about it. If you are, I'm not saying no one should take a break. Everyone should enjoy a nice, good weekend. We definitely need to rejuvenate and break ourselves from, the Monday to Friday. But it shouldn't be that, oh my God, I'm done with this. Like, that really tells you it's not a dream job then, right? So that'll be
right. If your sole purpose is to get to Friday, perhaps
exactly, yeah,
place for you.
That's not a dream job.
And I hear you both speaking about passion and identifying that dream job. And it reminds me of an interview that we did with the chair of our Alumni Association Executive Council this past year, Arjun Batra. He was speaking about when he graduated and when he was looking around for that dream job, he didn't see it. So he made it for himself. And of course, he founded the Dune School down in the GTA. And we'll be speaking a bit about creating that dream job for yourself at our session later on this month on February the 24th. But no, what I'm hearing from you is, that age-old belief that, if you find that a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So on to question 3 here. And Neil, perhaps we'll start with you on this one, just to change it up a little bit and to keep you on your toes. Where can people look for jobs that spark their particular interests outside of the standard job boards that we're all familiar with?
Okay, so here my experience is going to be, or rather my answer is going to be based heavily on my personal experience. The way I went about finding a job when I came to this country, and I'm sure Melissa, who's an expert in this, will give us a lot more points. But essentially, the way I broke it down was when I came here, I realized that after about 8 or 9 years of career back in India. In automotive industry, people did kind of knew me who I was, but when I came to Canada, I realized no one really knows me, and I'm about to jump in this industry, and I do want to grow. So how do I go about it? So whether it's finding a job or networking myself, so those were the two key things I always kept in mind. Finding a job is one thing, but networking is a parallel process that has to always go. And I realized that I do want to do it with a combination of using all the technologies that we have, whether it's a LinkedIn or any job board. But at the same time, the one advice I'll always give everyone is don't forget the human touch. Don't forget something as fundamental and basic as once you've connected someone on LinkedIn, sending a message, asking if there is a way we can, set up a call. And the way you approach always was, as a mentor, if I can, I mean, forget COVID, but otherwise I've even met people on coffee, for example, hey, a quick chat of, where you are in your career. So these are some fundamental things, let's not forget. And I think those are avenues still out there. And when I came to this country, I was pleasantly surprised that everyone was so welcome to get on a call, for example, or even meet in person. So these resources are very much out there. And the other thing I would say is outside of networking yourself and finding jobs, is try to find in the industry or the area where you want to grow, see if there are volunteer opportunities, see if there are industry events. I mean, I'll give again a personal example. When I started working with all these Toronto Auto Show and the whole auto show circuit, I realized that especially in Toronto, everyone from every single manufacturer's head office comes at the auto show. So I was like, voila, that's a good opportunity for me to network myself. I printed personal visiting cards for myself, like 150 of them while I was staying in Barrie. And it just had my personal detail, like my name, my email, and my LinkedIn profile. That's it. And every single day while I was doing my shift, working for Honda at that point, instead of taking a lunch break, I would visit every single automotive booth and just keep networking. Hey, that's me. Are you from head office? Okay, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not saying I got an immediate job out of that, but hey, my LinkedIn connections kind of really blew up thanks to that. And I now know a lot of people in the Canadian auto industry purely thanks to the one small seed that I had sown at that point. So really having that mix of both, putting yourself out there and reaching out. I think those would be like the three key things I'll say.
Those are some great tips, Neil. Thank you. And Melissa, over to you, recognizing, the standard job board still has a place in the world. But again, what are some tips that you can think of that allow us to search outside of the box, away from that standard job board?
I definitely agree with Neil that networking is a huge part of tapping into what we like to call the hidden job market, which is really just jobs that aren't posted on those traditional job boards like Indeed or Job Bank. But in addition to networking, you can also start taking a look at the corporate career pages of companies that particularly interest you. So if you want to work at RVH, for example, make sure that you're looking at the RVH career page regularly. Not everyone always ends up posting on Indeed because not everyone has to post on Indeed to find quality candidates. In addition to that, I would also recommend looking at industry-specific job boards. So for example, Charity Village or the HRPA has a job board for HR positions. That's another great source of jobs that you might not find on those traditional job boards, but that are definitely geared towards your skill set.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. And of course, at this point, I'll also take the opportunity to plug the Alumni Association a little further and to piggyback on the conversation about networking a little bit. Just remind both the students and the alumni on the call today that with an alumni community of more than 87,000 people around the world, there are always opportunities to network through us, be them virtually or in person, depending on the year that we're living in. And so certainly if you're seeing those opportunities pop out, because it's a great way to meet some new folks, both in your industry and outside of your industry.
I should also mention too that Georgian does also have its own job board. at iwantajob.ca under the job seeker tab. There is also a job board there that are jobs geared towards grads and towards the community at large.
Good catch, Melissa. So before we jump into question 4 here, Neil, I just wanted to let you know that we've got June Martin on the call here as well. We were speaking about here before we went live, so it's a nice fit to let you know that she's done a shout out to ABSC alumni there in the chat.
ABSC represent.
Over to the next question here. And Melissa, let's start with you. Once someone has found the posting for a job that they want, how do they get it? What are some of your best resume and interview tips that will help someone be successful?
Well, the first thing I always tell everyone about their resume is to always make sure that you're applying with a custom tailored resume for each position. No two positions are the same, so no two resumes should be the same. And that goes for cover letters as well. And when you're working on tailoring your resume, really focus on only highlighting what's relevant or pertinent to that specific position. It is great to have additional detail in there, but sometimes if you're putting too much additional detail, you're making the hay pile too big for the recruiter to sift through to find those needles that they're looking for. And those needles would be the key skills that they're looking to find. Once you do have your resume and cover letter tailored, and if that's something that you're not strong with, that is something that we can help you with down at the center. We can definitely help you out with that. Research the company prior to the interview. Know what they're about. Research their mission, vision, and values so that you can reflect that in your answers and show that you have more than just the skill set needed for the position. You have the personality and the disposition for the team and for the company, and that you're someone who will grow with the company. Another great tip is to research common interview questions for the industry that you're interviewing in, and just have some answers pre-prepared for that. So that you do have something prepared and you can feel a little bit more ready when those questions are sprung.
Excellent. And Neil, any advice from you on helping folks with some of those tips or tricks around the resume development and interviewing?
Absolutely. The very first point, what Melissa mentioned, I think that's the most important thing, the way she mentioned in terms of really tailoring your resume, because exactly like she mentioned, no two jobs are same. And at the same time, no two applicants are same. Every single one is very unique. You all have your own backgrounds and your skill set. So that's exactly what needs to come out. And then also it has to be absolutely tailored to that specific role. What I personally usually do is, in the past, whenever I've applied, obviously I look at the job description. I've printed it out at times, and I really break it down in terms of, what is the specific role and responsibility. You might want to highlight that part. You might want to, understand, okay, that's a responsibility or a key skill they're looking at. That's the key word. Catch that keyword. Do you have that in you? Have you done that in the past? Okay, make sure you mention that in your experience, because a lot of times, these online portals are going to go through keyword search, right, through your resume. No, it can just quickly scan that, and then only if you have, let's say, 80% match of what's the requirement and your resume, that's when your resume is going to be pulled up. So be very careful and attentive to those things. And it shouldn't just be a blanket way of applying. You might be talking about, okay, the same 5 jobs that you've done in the past, but the way you present them has to be tailored to the job role that you're applying to. Second, I would say always look at quantifying everything. If you've done something in the past that has a quantified meaning, whether it's back in Audi when I was a trainer, I would mention the number of trainings that I've done. How many people I've trained, a dollar value. If there is a way you can specify that. Quantify everything, because those are the keywords that someone who's reading is obviously going to go through. Because you got to understand, the people who read these resumes, whether it's HR or the hiring manager, depending on the company and the role, they might be going through a ton of these in a day. So for every single one of them, for them to read every line, put yourself in that position. You're not going to do that. So obviously, what's important is those key words that needs to definitely come out. And the last thing I'll say is always bring out you in your past experience. And what I mean by that is I've seen a lot of resumes where they'll just mention what the role was. You know what? I can just quickly Google what that role was, right? Like, if a digital marketing specialist at Google, Okay, I can just type it in Google and I'll get exactly what that role is. But what did Neil Survey do as that digital marketing specialist? That has to come out, because this resume is about you and not about that job role. So bring that out. What did you bring in that role? Is there something extra that you did? You went out of beyond, and you made some changes. That's what that guy wants to know, guy or girl who's interviewing you. And I would say one thing which even Melissa mentioned, stay up to date with current trends. What's going on out there. What are the resume templates out there, or cover letter templates. One of the things that I figured out while I was searching for jobs in Canada, which I didn't know in the past, there's a concept called as an interview leave behind. So it's like a small, single page document, which after you've done with your interview, if you want the interviewer to remember you, it's like a very quick snapshot of your top 5 or top 10 highlights, which you want them to remember. So I would always print that with me. I used to leave that, in person while I'm getting interviewed. So something like that. So there are a lot of these tricks out there. Figure it out, check what's the current trend. So yeah, I think those would be some of my tips.
Excellent. Those are great tips from both of you. And what I heard from both of you as well is to ensure that it's not generic, that it's personalized. And I guess a follow-up question to that would be yay or nay. What are your thoughts on having your cover letter personalized for a hiring manager? Is it necessary? Neil.
That was a question to me. Well, absolutely. Even a cover letter, 100% has to be personalized to yourself and the role. And the way I look at it from a cover letter point of view is the cover letter is your main gateway into the interview, or for that matter, for them, a reason to even look at that resume and go through it in detail. So very much has to be tailored, has to be different, cannot just be generic, what something from Google has been downloaded as a template. So. Yeah.
Excellent. Melissa, yay or nay, do we personalize the cover letter to a hiring manager?
Yeah, if you can find the hiring manager's name on LinkedIn somewhere and address them directly, that's ideal. I know that's not always possible. Some companies are kind of top secret about who their upper management is. But if you can find that and personalize it, that's a great idea. But definitely the cover letter should be custom to the position as well.
Excellent. And we've got one more question for the panel today before we visit our audience again. What is your best piece of advice for someone who wants to make a career move, either upwards in their company or into a different field entirely? And Melissa, let's start with you on this one.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is to take advantage of any and all learning opportunities that are presented to you, whether they be in your professional life or personal life. Any opportunity for learning is great, especially the ones that scare you, because outside of the comfort zone is definitely where the most growth happens. And another thing that I would recommend doing is growing your network. We've talked about networking a lot, but grow your network, because the larger your network is, the more chances you have of being known by various hiring managers, and the more chances you have of, when your resume gets submitted, it's not just a name on a piece of paper. The hiring manager already kind of knows you and can put in a face to that name and wants to bring you in.
Thank you, Melissa. Neil, any thoughts on this?
Sure thing. Before I give my answer, Melissa mentioned a very important point. Outside your comfort zone is where the real growth happens. I mean, that's a very, very important thing to remember when you make a switch. Going to my answer, I think the most important thing I would look at this, and this is again based on my personal experience, or my team in my company who's moved upwards or lateral, or they've completely switched careers. Whenever I have this conversation with them, the first thing I always ask is, understand what is motivating you to make that career move. So it could be, for example, you're just growing in a position, and okay, that's fine because you've been at a particular position. You want to make a lateral move. Okay, let's understand why you're doing that. Or you're completely done with the industry and now you want to move to a different industry. The reason why that's important is because I think based on which bucket you fit in, the answer is going to be different, right? For example, if you want to completely switch industry, then have you researched the other industry enough? Do you really think that's what it should be? Do you see yourself? And then that goes back to the dream job question, right? If, for example, you're making a lateral move, and this is something which is very, very typical in a corporate culture. For example, now I'm at a manager position. If I want to be a senior manager, I cannot just be in this role in my company for another few years and I'll naturally be. I will have to put some cross-functional skills. I'll have to go across different departments, stay at the same designation. So that's a whole different idea. And why is that? Is because obviously when you become someone who's more senior, you want to have cross-functional skills. You should have experienced other avenues of your company, of your industry as well. So that would be a different motivating factor. Or if you're just growing, within your role, of course, that's going to have a whole different study. You need to obviously know, you need to research what the new role is. Do you have the skill sets? If not, give yourself a timeline. And the way I look at it, look at this, and HR in my company always focuses on this is always give yourself short, medium, and long-term goals, right? When it comes to career, where you see yourself in maybe 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, and then beyond. So if that is what you have a vision, you're going to start working backwards accordingly. There are some roles which might probably need some qualification. They might need some certifications that you have to go through. So if that's your role after 2 years, that's a goal that you're going to get to. Okay, now is the time. Now is the time you're going to start reaching out or educate yourself about it. So I think all of these factors really roll up to the original question, which is what is motivating you to make that career move? And then depending on that, you gotta pick.
Excellent. Thank you, Neil. And we are starting to receive questions now from the audience. So I'm going to jump right into the questions and try to get as many of them over to our panel as possible here now. The first question asks us, and Melissa, perhaps we'll go to you on this one. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations around the length of a cover letter and resume that someone should be submitting to a hiring agency?
So your cover letter should always be no longer than a page. I would say likely 3 to 4 paragraphs, an introduction, 1 to 2 development paragraphs, and then a conclusion paragraph. As for the resume, a typical resume should be no longer than 2 pages. If, however, you are applying for more senior executive roles, at that time you may look at having a little bit longer of a resume, but typically 2 pages is the max.
Excellent, thank you. And Neil, you mentioned that, of course, you're of course a manager now. Do you have a preference when you're receiving resumes and cover letters on length?
I think lengthwise, I'll exactly stay with what Melissa mentioned. So 1-page cover letter, because like I mentioned before, that is your foot in the door for me to actually open the resume and read it. So it's literally a cover letter. And then a resume going more than 2 pages just becomes too long, unless there is some genuine, relevant job roles that you've done in the past. But at the same time, also make sure if you're going to be switching jobs every year and you have like 10 roles in 10 years, not the best way of putting yourself out there. So definitely keep yourself short, 2 pages, key points, and I think that should do it. That should at least get you an interview call. Excellent.
We've got consistency on the panel on that one. And of course, I did mention we have questions. So jumping right into the next one here. I've often spent time creating a custom cover letter only to find the job site only asks for a resume. Is it a good idea to submit both documents as one when uploading my resume? And Melissa, let's jump to you.
So typically I find that when you're doing an online application, there will be somewhere within the application that you can add additional documents, and it will say, it might even say cover letter, certifications, etc. That would be the appropriate place to drop your cover letter. I don't really recommend putting the cover letter and resume as one document because that just gives the applicant tracking software more to go through, and that could lower the percentage of keywords that you've hit.
That's some good tip. Neil, anything to add on this one?
The last point that you mentioned, I think that's the most important, the keyword search, because I do have some friends who work in HR and they always tell me like, the keyword search match percentage is based on which, a specific resume gets pulled out. So basically by putting in a cover letter as well, you will be confusing the software. So rather not for sure. But at the same time, my personal experience, they always will have an option of uploading additional documents, whether it specifically calls out cover letter or just additional documents. So I'm sure most sites should have an option.
Excellent. The next question we have is, how can mature-aged job seekers sell themselves? Do employers truly value experience, or do they prefer to pay less money to a younger job seeker? And I think this is probably a question that I hear often from some of our some of the mature folks. So any feedback or advice or insight to share on that?
Um, I would say that ageism does exist. I will acknowledge that. However, experience is definitely valued in the workplace. So it's about ensuring that your resume really reflects that experience. However, also towing the fine line of not dating yourself on paper, right? So I've seen individuals who have put computer certifications that date back to the 1990s. However, that's really just dating them because computer certifications from the 90s will not be relevant currently. I mean, technology has evolved so much. So that's just one example, is just making sure that your resume is reflecting your experience without dating yourself.
That's a great idea. Neil, anything to add on this one?
So yeah, I think even I would acknowledge, age bias does exist, but at the same time, it's not always a bad thing. And the reason why I would say that is it really comes down to the role. Like, and even I personally interview a lot of people for joining in our team, whether it's as an analyst or a specialist, for example. Yes, there is a way I could even give that job to a 35 or a 40-year-old, because probably they're just starting in this industry and whatnot. But at the same time, the one thing which always people who interview you will look at is this the right fit? And it works in both ways. It should be, okay, this as a company, am I getting benefited by this person and the experience this person has? And likewise, is this job going to be challenging and rewarding enough for you? If you're a 35-year-old who already has 10 years or 15 years worth experience, and if you're going to start as a specialist, maybe in 6 months you'll be like, hey, you know what, I'm outgrowing this job, I cannot do this anymore, so I would have to go again through a process of searching for someone. So it is always a fine line. It's always about finding that optimum balance between the two. Not to say that we're going to completely deny someone who's mature, but as an interest, do they have the right skill set, the right attitude, the right approach towards why are they even joining this position? I think that's that fine line that everyone has to strike always.
Thank you. And we have a question that's referencing the resume and cover letter conversation again. And Melissa, perhaps we'll start with you on this one. The question is really about the style of the resume, and it asks if there's a specific format or style that one should be using for resumes based on industry that they're applying to, or if it's a standard approach across the industries.
No, you should definitely do some industry-specific resume research to see kind of how resumes are set up within your industry. So for example, resumes in the trades are way more straightforward and simplified than a resume in perhaps business setting, where a business setting will go into a little bit more detail about quantifying things, as Neil mentioned. So definitely do some research on industry-specific resumes. And consider the style of your resume too. There are two main styles, functional and chronological. And you can definitely do a quick Google search on those two different styles. Again, they're functional and chronological, and determine which style works best for you. A chronological resume will typically work best for someone who is looking to stay within their same industry or grow within their same industry. Whereas a functional resume might work best for someone who's looking to transfer industry, as a functional resume is a little bit more skills focused.
Excellent. And a follow-up question to that one is, what format would you suggest for a CV to submit through the tracking software? Or do they have boxes, columns, headers, and footers, etc.?
I wouldn't recommend putting boxes, columns, or anything like that in the resume. That can actually typically confuse the applicant tracking software and might lead to something, to the content written in those boxes or tables not being read by the applicant tracking software. So stay minimal in your formatting. And I would usually submit it as a Word or a PDF document. PDF probably preferable.
And that was, of course, the next question that was here was is there a difference in the ability for the tracking software to read a Word document or a PDF? So what I'm hearing is either is fine.
Unless the application specifies specifically that it has to be a specific format, then either format should be fine.
Excellent. And being cognizant of time here, I'm going to jump to Neil with the next question.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one is a bit more philosophical in nature. It asks, did you have a what am I going to do now moment after you graduated?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely, I did. And so this has kind of a personal connection. I mean, that's because just my situation and the way I was. So I came in as an international student here, right? So I absolutely had no one in this country. Like I'm just one, no family, no friends, nothing at all. So everyone who I met obviously was through college. And funny enough, what happened was I knew that I'm graduating. I knew I have to leave my rental house in Barrie, and that was going to be at the end of August when I finished my course. And I was like, I don't even know where I'm going because I didn't have a job in hand. So it was literally a matter of even basic things like accommodation. So it certainly was a moment of what am I going to do now? And then I got a connection through someone, and I literally had to crash on someone's couch for 3 weeks. And the one thing I still knew was, in spite of me not having a job in my hand, I knew I'm not gonna deviate away from the industry, deviate away from what I want to do. I don't want to just in desperation take up job somewhere just to make ends meet. And I knew that because through my 2 years when I was studying, I had sown those seeds, whether it's working with different industry events or just connecting through different ways and means. So I knew that's going to happen. So having that solid foundation of networking and connections will definitely always help you. But it was a very, very real feeling, I would say, in terms of I don't know what's going on. I don't even know where I'm going to stay. So yes, the answer to that is yes.
Excellent. And Melissa, quickly over to you. Do you have a what am I doing now moment to share?
No, not from graduating. When I graduated, I had actually already started working on contract at Georgian the last 2 weeks of when I was in school. So I made arrangements with my teachers and said, hey, I got a job in my field, but I need to start now. So I'm going to have to miss classes and I'm going to have people send me the reviews and I'll still be there for final exams, but I won't be there for the reviews. So I didn't have that moment after graduation because it just kind of, I kept working. My what am I doing now moments would be more so towards the end of my contracts. So I worked multiple contracts at Georgian for about 2.5 years, 3 years before landing a permanent role. So it would be that month leading up to the end of the contract of what am I going to do when this contract ends? And I think I always took a chance on Georgian. Georgian is where I wanted to be. So I always took a chance on Georgian. I actually turned down permanent roles elsewhere to stay with Georgian, and it worked out.
Excellent. And while we're on the conversation of the what am I going to do next piece, I should also take this moment to again acknowledge that on February 24th, our next speaker panel will actually be speaking to a graduate who did a couple of not just job changes, but industry changes throughout her career. She's a 2-time Georgian graduate as well, and she'll speak about those moments where she came to the realization that it was the right time for her to be considering something new also. So more about that on the next panel, but for the benefit of the people on the call, do take an opportunity to look up that next panel as well and register for that one. We've come to the end of the question session. Before we close out, I will reach out to our panelists for final thoughts before we close the session today. Melissa, any final thoughts to share with our attendees?
I hope that you all do find your dream jobs and do reach out for supports that are available to you in the community to help you with that. And I thank you so much for having me today, Jamie.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. And Neil, over to you. Any final thoughts?
First off, thanks a lot to all of you guys for giving me this opportunity. And again, just like Melissa said, I really hope all of you guys do find the right job that you guys want. And I think the most important, or the one piece of advice I will give is the keyword reach out. trust me, Georgian as a college has fantastic resources. Industry out there, whether it's automotive or whatever, has some real good alumni out there. Just reach out. I mean, that's going to be the most important thing. And I don't know if today, as participants, we have international students, or eventually maybe they'll listen. The one advice to all of them I'll say is the same thing. Please do reach out. We do come from different cultures, different backgrounds, but you know what? The people in Georgian are a whole bunch of friendly people, very approachable. Please make the best of those resources, and they will really do their best in guiding you towards where this country and the industry can welcome you. So do reach out. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you to you both. And I'll take this opportunity to make everybody on the call aware also that on behalf of our two speakers today, we will be making a donation to support a student scholarship in honor of the time that both Melissa and Neil have given to us today. So the impact will continue on into the year ahead for a student journey. And for the benefit of the folks on the call today, if you'd like more information about alumni engagement or ways to stay connected, you can visit us online at georgiancollege.ca/alumni. And for the alumni on the call, remember to register yourselves into the Georgian Alumni Network at georgianalumni.ca. And there you'll find incredible resources, including a job bank, photo albums, community engagement rooms where you can speak with fellow graduates, as well as a mentorship platform where you can connect with other graduates to perhaps open up those networking channels a little more. So on behalf of everybody here at Georgian College, thank you so much for joining us today, Melissa, Neil, and everybody on the call. And remember to register for our panel on February the 24th. Take care, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.